Welcome to the captivating realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our exciting new stories. Enjoy the journey.
Timothy ambled through the lively alien marketplace, his sharp gaze sweeping over the diverse array of beings from all corners of the galaxy. His ragged attire and unkempt look concealed the immense power hidden beneath. For a week now, he had embraced the life of a drifter on this remote planet, in search of any semblance of excitement in his otherwise dull existence. The chaotic mix of alien languages and the overwhelming sense of unfamiliar foods bombarded his senses. He scratched his unkempt beard, grimacing at the grime coating his fingers. While he had certainly mastered the homeless aesthetic, the persistent itch was becoming more bothersome than adventurous. Perhaps I should have opted to be a mime instead, he muttered, drawing puzzled looks from nearby vendors. At least then I'd have a valid excuse to avoid conversing with people. His attention was drawn to a ruckus near the marketplace's center. Timothy squinted as he noticed a group of muscular mercenaries surrounding a woman and child. The woman's sapphire skin and flowing pink hair distinguished her even in this eclectic crowd. She clutched her daughter tightly, her regal posture contrasting with the fear in her eyes. Timothy couldn't help but smirk. Finally, something intriguing, he approached, eavesdropping on the confrontation. "Come now, Princess Adelina," a scarred mercenary growled, his tentacles writhing ominously. "The Empire has a hefty bounty on you and the little one. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Adelina's voice was icy. "I'd rather die than return to that gilded cage. You'll have to kill me first." "That can be arranged," another mercenary sneered, reaching for his blaster. Timothy's mind raced as he formulated a suitably absurd challenge. 3 seconds, hands only. "Perfect!" he exclaimed. "Hey guys!" he called out, feigning drunkenness for effect. "How about a little show?" The mercenaries turned, their confusion swiftly shifting to amusement at the sight of the disheveled human. "Get lost, beggar," the leader spat. "This doesn't concern you." Timothy stumbled forward, playing up his drunkenness. "Come on, I bet I could take all of you down in 3 seconds using just my hands." The group erupted in laughter, and even Adelina looked at him as if he had grown a second head. "You hear that, boys?" The leader chuckled. "Looks like we've got a comedian here." Timothy grinned, silently counting down, 3, 2, 1. In a flash, almost too quick for the eye to see, he struck. His hands became a blur, delivering precise blows that sent the mercenaries flying in every direction. Bodies collapsed to the ground in rapid succession, accompanied by the sickening sounds of breaking bones and groans of pain. True to his word, exactly 3 seconds later, Timothy stood among a sea of conscious mercenaries, cracking his knuckles with a hint of disappointment. He mused. "That was easier than I expected. Maybe I should have tried it blindfolded." Adelina stared at him, her blue features a mix of awe and disbelief. Her daughter peeked out from behind her legs, eyes wide with wonder. "Who? What are you?" Adelina stuttered. Timothy shrugged, picking a couple of strange spiky fruits from a nearby stall. He tossed one to the stunned vendor. "Just a guy looking for a good time," he said, taking a bite of the fruit and grimacing at the sour flavor. "Though I might have picked the wrong planet for that." Turning to leave, he began to contemplate his next self-imposed challenge, perhaps overthrowing a dictator with nothing but bad puns and interpretive dance. "Wait!" Adelina called out, desperation in her voice as she grabbed his arm, sending an unexpected jolt through him. He turned, raising an eyebrow at the contact. Adelina's eyes darted around nervously. "We need your help. The Galactic Empire won't stop hunting us." I can be your concubine if you protect us." Timothy blinked in surprise, then burst into laughter. Adelina pulled back, clearly offended. Sorry, he said, wiping tears from his eyes. "But really, a concubine? That's too easy and boring." Adelina frowned. Easy? Boring? I'm considered one of the most desirable. Timothy held up a hand, interrupting her. I'm sure you are, but here's the thing, I don't do easy. If you want a real challenge. He stroked his chin, a mischievous glint in his eye. How about this, I'll help you out, but I'll only use a tiny fraction of my power. That should keep things interesting. Adelina stared at him, completely bewildered. Are you crazy? The Empire will send entire fleets after us. Exactly. Timothy grinned. Now we're getting somewhere. So what do you say? Up for a little galactic adventure? Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the marketplace. Imperial troops flooded in from every direction, their stark white armor contrasting sharply with the vibrant chaos around them. Halt! A mechanized voice boomed. By order of the Galactic Emperor. Apprehend the fugitive Adelina and her child immediately. Timothy cracked his knuckles, excitement gleaming in his eyes. Well, Princess, looks like it's decision time. Stick with the charming, possibly unhinged stranger or take your chances with the trigger-happy stormtroopers. What will it be? Adelina hesitated, then squared her shoulders. I must be out of my mind, she muttered, nodding at Timothy. All right, stranger, show me what you can do. Timothy's grin widened. Oh, this is going to be fun. New challenge, take out all these troops without moving my feet. And go. As blaster fire erupted around them, Timothy became a whirlwind of motion, his upper body twisting and turning in impossible ways to deflect bolts with his bare hands, sending them ricocheting back at the stunned troopers, while his feet remained firmly planted. Adelina watched in awe as the strange human took down the Imperial forces effortlessly. Her daughter cheered, clearly thrilled by the spectacle. Mommy, he's like a superhero. The little girl exclaimed. Adelina couldn't help but smile. I'm not sure hero is the right word, sweetheart, but he's certainly something. As the last trooper fell, Timothy stretched lazily. That was a nice warm-up. So, Blue, ready to blow this popsicle stand? Adelina nodded, still trying to process what she had just seen. Yes, but where will we go? Timothy's eyes sparkled with mischief. Oh, I'm sure we'll figure something out. The galaxy is a vast place, after all, plenty of trouble to find. He extended his hand to Adelina, wiggling his fingers invitingly. So, what do you say? Ready for the adventure of a lifetime? Adelina hesitated for a moment, then took his hand. Despite the grime, his grip was strong and oddly reassuring. I suppose I don't have much choice, do I? There's always a choice, Timothy replied with a wink. It's just that some choices are a lot more fun than others. As they navigated the chaos of the marketplace, dodging panicked aliens and debris, Adelina couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a deal with a trickster god. However, as she watched Timothy effortlessly dispatch another group of Imperial soldiers while hopping on one foot, his latest self-imposed challenge, she realized that perhaps this madman was exactly what she and her daughter needed. So, Timothy called over his shoulder as they raced toward the spaceport, I think our first stop should be somewhere nice and dangerous. How do you feel about an active volcano? Adelina groaned, it was going to be a very long journey. As they approached the docking bays, a massive Imperial cruiser loomed overhead, casting a dark shadow over the spaceport. Adelina's heart sank. We'll never make it, she said, clutching her daughter tightly. They've blocked all the exits. Timothy's eyes sparkled with excitement. Now you're talking about a real challenge. He rubbed his hands together gleefully. Okay, new parameters, steal a ship, break through the blockade, and make it to hyperspace. And to make it interesting, I'll do it all while reciting bad poetry. Adelina stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm always serious about being ridiculous, Timothy replied with a wink. He cleared his throat dramatically. Ahem. There once was a man from Nantucket, please don't. Adelina interrupted, pinching the bridge of her nose. Timothy pouted. Everyone's a critic. Fine, how about haikus instead? Before Adelina could object further, Timothy sprinted toward the nearest ship, a sleek, obviously expensive yacht. Imperial troops swarmed around it, but Timothy barreled through them like they were bowling pins. Shiny spaceship, yay! He shouted. Imps fall down. Go boom. Time to fly. The area surrounding the ship was chaotic, soldiers being tossed left and right as he nearly danced up the boarding ramp, signaling for Adelina and her daughter to follow. Come on, Blue, he shouted excitedly. Adventure awaits. Adelina hesitated for just a moment, then sprinted after him, her daughter giggling in her arms. Upon entering the ship, Timothy was already seated in the pilot's chair, his fingers flying across the controls. Buckle up, kids, he said, flashing a wild grin. This is where the fun begins. The ship's engines roared to life, and they burst out of the docking bay like a cork popping from a bottle. Adelina clutched her seat, her knuckles turning pale as Timothy performed a series of wild maneuvers. Weaving through the Imperial blockade. Lasers go pew-pew. Timothy declared solemnly. We zoom very fast. Please don't throw up inside. Despite the craziness of the situation, Adelina found herself laughing, while her daughter cheered with each near miss and barrel roll as they broke through the planet's atmosphere. Ahead of them loomed the massive Imperial cruiser, its formidable guns tracking their approach. Oh, big mean ship, Timothy narrated. Time to do something reckless. Hold on tight. He yanked the controls sharply, sending them into a spiraling dive straight toward the cruiser's bridge. Adelina's stomach dropped, but she couldn't look away from the viewport. At the last possible moment, Timothy pulled up, skimming the cruiser's surface. The confused Imperial gunners, unable to aim properly at such close range, ended up firing at their own ship in their attempts to hit the small yacht. Oopsie daisy, my mistake. Timothy joked. Friendly fire, right? Now let's get out of here. With one last burst of speed, they cleared the cruiser's mass shadow. Timothy's hand hovered over the hyperdrive lever. Roses are red, violets are blue, he announced. Time to make the jump. Yahoo! The stars elongated into streaks, and they vanished into the swirling vortex of hyperspace. As the adrenaline subsided, Adelina slumped in her seat, feeling exhausted yet exhilarated. She turned to Timothy, who was reclining in the pilot's chair with his feet up on the console, munching on another one of those spiky fruits. I don't even know where to start, she said. Who are you really? Timothy shrugged, tossing the fruit's core over his shoulder. I told you, Blue. I'm just a guy looking for a good time. He flashed a grin, his eyes sparkling. I have a feeling things are about to get a lot more interesting with you two around. Adelina couldn't help but smile back. You're completely insane, you know that. Sanity's overrated, Timothy replied with a wink. Now, how about we find a fun place to lay low for a while? I hear the lava beaches of Mustafar are lovely this time of year. As Adelina groaned and her daughter cheered, Timothy leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile on his face. For the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of genuine excitement. Whatever lay ahead, it certainly wouldn't be boring. The adventure had just begun. The stolen yacht hurtled through hyperspace, its occupants an unlikely trio. Timothy sprawled in the pilot's seat, feet resting on the console, casually tossing a glowing orb from one hand to the other. Adelina sat stiffly beside him, her sapphire skin practically vibrating with tension. In the back, little Mia giggled as she explored every corner of the luxurious ship. So, Timothy drawled, breaking the silence. Where to, Blue? Got any fun hideouts in mind? Adelina's pink hair whipped around as she shot him a glare. This isn't a game. The entire Imperial fleet will be after us. Timothy's eyes sparkled. Exactly. Now that's what I call a party. He leaned in conspiratorially. What if we crash the Emperor's summer palace? I hear the security is top-notch. Are you crazy? Adelina hissed. Probably, Timothy shrugged, but sanity's overrated, remember? Before Adelina could respond, alarms blared, and the ship shuddered as it was pulled out of hyperspace. Ooh, company. Timothy grinned, examining the readout. Looks like an entire squad of Imperial cruisers. This should be entertaining. Adelina's complexion shifted to a lighter shade of blue. We're finished. Nah, just challenged, Timothy winked. He cracked his knuckles dramatically. All right, new objective, take out the whole fleet using only my left hand. What? Adelina stammered. That's impossible, her words trailed off as Timothy sprang into action, his right hand tucked firmly behind his back. He danced across the controls, the yacht swirling between massive cruisers, firing from its tiny guns. Miraculously, every shot found a critical weak spot, causing explosions to erupt in the void of space. Mia cheered from the back. Do it again, Mr. Timothy. Timothy obliged, sending them into a corkscrew dive that made Adelina's stomach lurch. Your wish is my command. Princess, he called back. How about we try this upside down? The ship flipped, and Timothy's left hand became a blur. Imperial ships burst into flames, and in mere minutes, the entire squadron was reduced to drifting wreckage. Adelina stared in disbelief at the devastation, then at Timothy's nonchalant grin. How did you do that? Timothy waved dismissively with his left hand. Child's play. Now, if you want a real challenge, I could do it blindfolded next time. As they jumped back to hyperspace, Adelina felt torn between frustration and reluctant admiration. This peculiar human was either their savior or would get them all killed in spectacular fashion. Days blended into one another as they hopped from planet to planet across the galaxy. Each stop introduced new dangers and absurd self-imposed challenges for Timothy. On a swamp world, he dispatched a platoon of Imperial troops while hopping on one foot and reciting terrible limericks. In a busy spaceport, he sabotaged an entire Star Destroyer's systems without using his hands at all, relying solely on a series of increasingly ridiculous dance moves. During a high-speed chase through an asteroid field, he piloted their ship using only his elbows while simultaneously juggling those spiky fruits he seemed to love so much. Through it all, Mia's delighted laughter rang out. The little girl took to Timothy like a fish to water, completely enchanted by his antics. Despite her best efforts to remain aloof, Adelina found her initial irritation softening. One evening, they set up camp on a barren desert world. Twin moons hung low in the sky, casting everything in an otherworldly blue glow. Mia had finally drifted off to sleep, curled up in a cozy nest of blankets nearby. Adelina watched Timothy as he lounged by the fire, his expression contemplative for once instead of mischievous. Why do you do it? She asked softly. Timothy's eyes flickered to her, a hint of surprise visible. Do what? Be devastatingly handsome and charming? Adelina rolled her eyes, though there was no real annoyance in it. You know what I mean. All these challenges, the constant jokes. You're clearly powerful enough to rule the galaxy if you wanted. Why this? Timothy was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, stripped of its usual bravado. When you're unbeatable, life loses its flavor, he said. These challenges are the only thing that. Adelina leaned forward, sensing there was more to the story. But why seek that power in the first place? Timothy's lips quirked in a humorless smile. Once upon a time, I was just a scrawny kid watching the strong prey on the weak. Couldn't do a damn thing about it. His fist clenched at his side. But I was never afraid, not once. I wanted that strength so badly I could taste it. He let out a bitter laugh. Funny thing is, when I finally got it, well. Be careful what you wish for, right? Adelina's hand twitched as if to reach out to him, but she held back. And now Timothy's eyes met hers, and for a fleeting moment, she glimpsed a profound loneliness behind the mirth. Now I'm just trying to feel something, anything. The vulnerability vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by his trademark grin. But hey, enough of that sappy stuff. How about we liven things up? I bet I can juggle these embers with my toes. As Timothy proceeded to do just that, yelping comically each time he singed himself, Adelina found herself smiling despite herself. There was more to this infuriating man than met the eye, and she was beginning to see glimpses of the person behind the mask. Their journey continued, a chaotic whirlwind of narrow escapes and increasingly outlandish stunts. Timothy's antics never failed to keep Mia entertained, even in the face of danger. During one particularly harrowing battle, as laser fire erupted around them, Timothy scooped up Mia and spun her around, turning the firefight into an impromptu dance lesson. All right, princess, he grinned, effortlessly deflecting blaster bolts with one hand while twirling the giggling girl with the other. Let's work on your waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, dodge the explosion. Adelina wanted to be furious, but the sound of her daughter's laughter, so rare since their life had been upended, melted her resolve. As the weeks passed, Adelina found herself softening toward Timothy. His irreverence and seemingly suicidal challenges still drove her to distraction, but she couldn't deny the growing warmth in her chest when she watched him with Mia or the way her pulse quickened when he flashed that infuriating, charming grin her way. For his part, Timothy felt something shifting within himself. The constant need for ever more ridiculous challenges began to take a back seat to simpler pleasures, Mia's delighted squeals when he showed her a new trick or the rare genuine smile that graced Adelina's face when she thought he wasn't looking. One night, as they huddled in the cramped quarters of yet another stolen ship, Mia fast asleep between them, Timothy found himself studying Adelina's profile in the dim light, the elegant curve of her jaw, the way her pink hair fell across her forehead. You're staring, Adelina murmured, not opening her eyes. Can you blame me? Timothy quipped, but there was a softness to his tone that hadn't been there before. The view's not bad. Adelina's eyes fluttered open, meeting his gaze for a moment. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Then a proximity alarm shattered the moment. Timothy was on his feet in an instant, his usual manic grin sliding into place. Showtime, he declared. What do you say we give our Imperial friends a real spectacle this time? As they raced to the cockpit, Adelina couldn't quite suppress her own smile. Just try not to blow us all up in the process, she warned. Oh, ye of little faith, Timothy winked. When have I ever let you down? The battle that followed was Timothy's most audacious performance yet. He piloted their tiny ship through the heart of an Imperial armada, all while balancing on one foot, eyes closed, and humming an off-key rendition of an old Corellian drinking song. Somehow, impossibly, they emerged victorious as the last Star Destroyer erupted into a brilliant fireball. Timothy opened his eyes and gave a theatrical bow. Tada, he exclaimed. Now that's what I call. He trailed off, noticing Adelina's expression. What's wrong, Blue? Not impressed by my death-defying heroics, Adelina's brow furrowed. It's not that. It's just. Timothy, did you plan this? Plan what? He asked innocently, but there was a glimmer in his eye that gave him away. This. Adelina gestured to the viewport where the remains of the Imperial fleet drifted. The entire armada? The impossible odds? Did you deliberately lead us into this trap? Timothy's grin turned sheepish. Well, maybe. I mean, come on, Blue, we needed to thin out their forces eventually. Might as well do it with style, right? Adelina's jaw dropped. You risked all our lives for what? A thrill? Hey now. Timothy held up his hands. I had it under control the whole time, mostly, like at least 60% under control. Before Adelina could respond, a new alarm blared. The ship's computer announced the approach of an even larger Imperial force. Ah, Timothy rubbed the back of his neck. That would be the backup I maybe sort of knew was coming. Don't suppose you'd believe me if I said this was part of the plan too? Adelina's glare could have melted Durasteel. Right. Timothy nodded. So, fancy a trip to that Imperial space station? I hear the view's lovely this time of year. As they rocketed towards what looked like certain doom, Adelina couldn't decide if she wanted to kiss Timothy or throw him out the airlock, possibly both. The massive space station loomed before them, bristling with weapons. Squadrons of TIE fighters swarmed like angry insects. It was a death trap, plain and simple, and Timothy was grinning like a madman. Now this, he declared, cracking his knuckles, is what I call a party. All right, new challenge, take down the entire station while giving Mia her first piloting lesson. What? Adelina yelped. Timothy, she's 5. Never too early to start. Timothy scooped up the wide-eyed Mia, plopping her in his lap at the controls. Ready to be Daddy's little co-pilot, Princess, Mia's answering squeal of delight was nearly drowned out by the sound of Imperial weapon fire erupting around them as their tiny ship danced through the maelstrom. Timothy's laughter mingled with Mia's giggles and Adelina's half-hearted protests. Despite the insanity of it all, despite the very real danger they were in, Adelina felt something warm bloom in her chest. This ridiculous, impossible man had brought more light into their lives in a few short weeks than she'd known in years. As Timothy guided Mia's small hands over the controls, expertly weaving them through a hail of laser fire, Adelina realized with a start that she wouldn't trade any of this for all the safety in the galaxy. The battle raged on, Timothy turning what should have been certain death into a grand spectacle. With Mia helping at the controls, they spun and dove, leaving chaos in their wake. Somehow, between Timothy's impossible skills and Mia's joyous button mashing, critical systems across the station began to fail. That's my girl. Timothy crowed as another section of the station erupted in flames. You're a natural. Adelina, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, alternated between gasping in terror and reluctant amazement. Timothy, she managed between barrel rolls, when we survive this, if we survive this, we're going to have a long talk about appropriate activities for children. Timothy shot her a wink. Oh, come on, Blue. Nothing brings a family together like a little high-stakes space combat, right? As if to punctuate his point, a massive explosion rocked the station. Alarms blared, announcing an imminent reactor overload. And that's our cue to make a dashing exit, Timothy declared. He scooped Mia up, tossing her gently to Adelina. Strapping in, ladies. This is going to be a bumpy ride. With a whoop of pure exhilaration, Timothy sent their ship hurtling towards a rapidly closing docking bay. They squeezed through mere seconds before massive blast doors slammed shut, the heat of the explosion nipping at their heels as they burst free of the dying station's gravity well. Timothy executed a perfect barrel roll. Behind them, the Imperial fortress erupted in a spectacular ball of fire. Timothy grinned as he turned to his astonished passengers. Now that's how you make an exit. Mia cheered, bouncing in Adelina's lap once more. Adelina couldn't contain her laughter, it was either that or tears. You, she said, giving Timothy a look that mixed exasperation with affection, are absolutely insane. Guilty as charged, Timothy replied with a wink. But come on, Blue, you're having fun. As they sped away from the wreckage of the Imperial fleet, Adelina couldn't help but agree. Despite the danger and chaos, she hadn't felt this alive in years. The adventure was far from over, and against her better judgment, she found herself eager for whatever madness Timothy would come up with next. The stolen yacht glided through the dark expanse of space, its passengers reveling in the afterglow of their latest impossible victory. Timothy lounged in the pilot's seat, his feet resting on the console, a familiar mischievous sparkle in his eyes. Beside him, Adelina's sapphire skin shimmered under the starlight, while Mia napped peacefully in her lap. "So," Timothy drawled, breaking the comfortable silence, "what's next on our grand galactic tour? I hear the acid rain on Vun is lovely this time of year." Adelina rolled her eyes, though her irritation was gone. "How about somewhere that doesn't involve mortal peril for a change? Where's the fun in that?" Timothy replied with a wink. However, there was a softness in his gaze as he looked at Adelina and Mia, a warmth he hadn't felt in ages. Adelina must have sensed the change, as her expression turned contemplative. "Timothy," she began cautiously, "I've been wanting to ask, how did you become who you are?" The playful light in Timothy's eyes dimmed, replaced by a shadow of past pain. He fell silent for a moment, his gaze lost in the stars beyond the viewport. "It's not exactly a bedtime story, Blue," he finally said, his tone unusually somber. Adelina reached out and rested her blue hand gently on his arm. "I'd like to know if you're willing to share." Taking a deep breath, Timothy nodded. "All right, but don't say I didn't warn you." He leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. "Once upon a time," he began, a wry smile forming, "there was a scrawny kid on a backwater world. Nothing special about him, except for his talent for finding trouble, and he found it in spades." As Timothy spoke, his story unfolded like a holodrama. He vividly described a harsh world where the strong preyed on the weak, where a young boy watched helplessly as everything he cherished was ripped away. "I lost everyone," he said quietly, "my family, my friends, all gone because I wasn't strong enough to protect them." Adelina's grip on his arm tightened, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But you know what?" Timothy continued. A fierce light igniting in his eyes. "I wasn't afraid, not even once. I was angry, and I vowed I would become strong enough that nothing could ever harm me or anyone I cared about again." Then, Timothy's tale took a darker turn. He spoke of forbidden knowledge, ancient artifacts, and cosmic forces beyond understanding, of sacrifices made and prices paid. "I got what I wanted," he said hollowly, "all the power in the universe. But it came at a cost. I couldn't feel anything, fear, joy, love, it all faded away." He gestured expansively. "So I began pushing myself, crazy stunts, impossible odds, anything to feel that rush again, to feel alive." Silence enveloped the cockpit as Timothy's words lingered in the air. Adelina's hand had moved from his arm to grip his tightly, and she softly asked, "Timothy?" He turned to her, really seeing her, and felt something stir in his chest, something he thought he had lost long ago. "Now," he said, a genuine smile replacing his usual cocky demeanor, "I'm starting to think I may have found something worth more than all that power." His gaze shifted to the sleeping Mia, then back to Adelina. "Your smiles, your laughter, the way you roll your eyes when I do something foolish," he chuckled, "which, let's face it, is pretty often." Adelina's breath caught in her throat. "Tim," but before she could finish, alarms blared throughout the ship. The moment shattered as they snapped to attention. "Proximity alert!" Timothy shouted, fingers flying over the controls. "Looks like your old Imperial friends have found us again." Adelina's expression hardened. "They won't stop, will they?" "Not until," Timothy interrupted, his trademark grin reappearing. "What do you say we end this chase once and for all?" Adelina blinked. "What do you mean?" Timothy's eyes sparkled with that familiar mix of mischief and danger. "I mean, let's go big or go home. One last hurrah to send a message they won't forget." As he detailed his audacious plan, Adelina felt torn between disbelief and excitement. It was undoubtedly insane, but when had anything about their journey been sane? "Are you sure about this?" she asked. Even as a smile crept onto her lips. "Blue, I've never been more sure of anything in my life, well, except maybe my devastating good looks." Adelina rolled her eyes, but she couldn't hide the fondness in her expression. All right then, let's do this. What followed was a whirlwind of action that made their previous escapades seem tame by comparison. Timothy piloted their small ship straight into the heart of the Imperial fleet, weaving between massive star destroyers with incredible precision. But this time, there was a new energy to his movements, a purpose beyond mere thrill-seeking. As they approached the Imperial flagship, Timothy turned to Adelina. "Ready for your starring role?" "Blue." Adelina took a deep breath and nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." With a dramatic flourish, Timothy opened a calm channel to the entire Imperial fleet. Adelina's regal voice filled the airwaves, delivering a scathing condemnation of the Empire's tyranny and declaring her intent to build a new, just society far from their reach. Meanwhile, Timothy's hands blurred over the controls. Weapon systems across the fleet malfunctioned, turning on their own ships. Engines sputtered and failed, while their tiny vessel danced through the chaos unscathed. Timothy grinned as the pandemonium erupted around them. For the grand finale, he input a series of commands, and suddenly every screen in the Imperial Armada lit up with a goofy animated caricature of the Emperor himself dancing to a catchy tune and announcing his retirement to become an interpretive dancer. As the Imperial forces plunged into chaos, Timothy propelled their ship away, leaving the remnants of the once mighty fleet behind. "And that," he declared with a flourish, "is how you make an exit." Adelina burst into laughter, the sound filled with pure joy. "You're absolutely mad." She gasped between giggles. "Guilty as charged," Timothy replied with a wink. "But admit it, you wouldn't have me any other way." As they soared away from the wreckage, leaving their pursuers in disarray, a sense of closure settled over them. One chapter of their lives had ended, but another was just beginning. "So," Adelina said softly, her hand finding Timothy's. "Where to now?" Timothy's expression softened as he gazed at her and then at the still sleeping Mia. "How about we find somewhere to call home? Somewhere quiet, well, relatively quiet. I think I need to redefine my idea of a challenge." Adelina's eyes widened. "You mean?" Timothy nodded, a warm smile replacing his usual smirk. "Yeah, I think it's time for a new adventure. One that doesn't involve so many explosions, well, maybe just a few for old time's sake." As they charted a course for a distant, peaceful world, Timothy felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. It wasn't the adrenaline rush. After a long pursuit, Timothy discovered something deeper and more meaningful: true happiness. It struck him suddenly, and he realized he had finally found what he had been seeking. The years that followed were filled with joy, laughter, and the occasional bout of madness. Timothy and Adelina settled on a distant planet, where they created a home that balanced domestic bliss with a delightful chaos. Their daughter Mia grew into a spirited young woman, inheriting her adoptive father's love for thrilling stunts and her mother's dignified presence. She quickly became the local swoop bike racing circuit's darling, much to Adelina's dismay and Timothy's barely hidden pride. As Adelina humorously pointed out, their family continued to expand. 3 more children joined the mix, each a perfect combination of Timothy's playful nature and Adelina's elegance. Among them was Zara, who boasted skin as blue as her mother's and an extraordinary talent for reprogramming droids to carry out increasingly absurd tasks. Then there were the twins, Nova and Orion, whose idea of sibling bonding involved elaborate pranks that often turned their home into a joyful mess. Through it all, Timothy found himself repeatedly astonished, not by acts of bravery or cosmic powers, but by the simple pleasures of family life. He cherished the warmth of Adelina's smile every morning, felt immense pride watching Mia take her first solo flight, and laughed along with his younger children as he shared slightly embellished stories of his adventurous past. Old habits, however, die hard. Timothy still found it impossible to resist the temptation of outrageous antics, much to Adelina's mix of annoyance and amusement. He once decided to liven up the local planetary defense drills, leaving the serious military officials baffled as their rigorous exercises transformed into a galactic version of Capture the Flag. Another memorable day involved teaching the kids about zero gravity by temporarily disabling the planet's gravitational field, leading to the unforgettable sight of bewildered neighbors and livestock floating past their windows. As the years passed, Timothy came to realize that his greatest challenge and joy lay in the ordinary moments of life, being a husband, a father, and a friend. One evening, as they relaxed on their porch watching twin suns set beyond the horizon, Adelina turned to him with a knowing smile. "So," she teased, "are you still finding enough excitement in this quiet life?" Timothy glanced at her, then at their lively children playing in the yard. Mia was showing the twins a new acrobatic trick that would likely result in at least one broken vase, while Zara fiddled with a droid that appeared to be developing a concerning level of self-awareness. He chuckled, pulling Adelina closer. "You know what, Blue? I think I've discovered the greatest challenge of all." "Oh. And what would that be?" Adelina inquired, intrigued. Timothy's eyes sparkled with a blend of mischief and warmth as he replied, "Learning to love while knowing I could lose it all again. It turns out that requires more courage than facing an entire Imperial fleet." Adelina's demeanor softened as she leaned in to kiss him gently. "Well," she said softly, "I'd say you're handling that challenge quite admirably." As night descended and stars began to twinkle in the sky, Timothy reflected on the journey that had led him here, from a frightened, angry boy to a nearly omnipotent being chasing endless thrills, and finally to this, a man who had found genuine happiness in his family's love. He understood that true courage didn't mean being fearless, it meant having the bravery to love deeply, despite the risks involved. And that, he mused while gazing at his beautiful, extraordinary family, was the most thrilling adventure of all. The galaxy might no longer tremble at his name, but Timothy found that it didn't bother him in the least. He had exchanged cosmic power for bedtime stories, death-defying stunts for family picnics, and the adrenaline of battle for the warmth of Adelina's embrace, and he wouldn't have it any other way. As the family gathered for their nightly tradition of stargazing and sharing increasingly embellished stories of past adventures, Timothy couldn't help but smile. Life might be quieter now, but it was anything but dull. With this bunch, a new adventure was always just around the corner, and he couldn't wait to discover what the next chapter would hold. Greetings, space cadets and lovers of cosmic comedy. Wasn't that an exhilarating journey through the galaxy? I hope you enjoyed this tale of Timothy, the man who could conquer worlds but chooses to conquer boredom instead. And let's not forget Adelina, the stunning blue-skinned beauty who's probably developing a nervous twitch from all the close calls. Oh, and little Mia, who is destined to have the coolest "take your daughter to work" stories ever. Now, I know what you're thinking, this story was more action-packed than a Wookiee family reunion and funnier than a hut in a tutu, and you're absolutely right. But here's the thing, I need you to let me know that too. So, if you laughed, cried, or simply marveled at Timothy's ability to save the galaxy while reciting bad poetry, do me a favor and hit that like button. It's right there, probably glowing like a lightsaber. Go on, give it a tap. I assure you it won't bite, unlike some of those strange alien fruits Timothy keeps sampling. But wait, there's more. If you want to make my day and perhaps inspire more cosmic chaos, leave a comment. Share your favorite moment, your theories about Timothy's true origins, or your ideas for his next absurd self-imposed challenge. Maybe he could take on an entire Imperial fleet using only interpretive dance. The possibilities are endless. Remember, every like and comment fuels the madness, it's like fuel for the hyperspace engine of my imagination. Without your feedback, I might start writing sensible, down-to-earth stories about, I don't know, accounting or something, and nobody wants that, right? So go ahead, spread the word, and may the farce be with you. Until next time, keep your towel handy and remember to look up at the stars now and then. You never know when a certain eccentric hero might come crashing through your atmosphere. Thanks for tuning in, you wonderful bunch of nerf herders.